Hi, peeps. You're listening to She's My Cherry Pie, the baking podcast from the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jessie Sheehan. I'm a baker, recipe developer, and author of 4 baking books, including Snackable Bakes. In each episode, I hang out with some of the sweetest bakers around and take a deep dive into their signature bakes. My guest today is Anna Stockwell. Anna is a New York-based recipe developer, food stylist, writer, culinary consultant, and video host. She's been the senior food editor for Epicurious and Bon Appétit and worked in many other test kitchens in New York City. She's known for her approachable, flexible, and visually appealing recipes. She's also the author of 2 cookbooks, For the Table and The Butter Book, which was just released this spring. Anna joins me today to talk about her new book, her love of baking, and why butter is such an essential ingredient in the kitchen. She tells me about writing the book, a little bit about the history of butter, how to make butter, and more. And she shares her hot take regarding unsalted butter brands and baking, and why she loves cultured butter so much. Then, Anna walks me through her birthday butter cake recipe from the Butter Book. I loved learning about why she loves the reverse creaming method for this cake, why she adds hot water to her chocolate frosting. Mind blown, peeps, this is such a good tip. And why this cake and frosting deserve the best butter you can find. You're going to love hearing from Anna, so stay tuned for our chat. You can find today's recipe at cherrybomb.substack.com. The new issue of Cherry Bomb magazine is almost here. If you already subscribe to our print magazine, thank you. Be sure to check your inbox so you can choose which cover you'd like to get. We have 5 different covers. The theme is game changers, and all of the women featured have changed the game in a major way. Not a subscriber? Head to cherrybomb.com, subscribe, and get issues delivered directly to you. You can also pick up an issue at one of the great bookstores and culinary shops that carry Cherry Bomb, like McNally Jackson and Kitchen Arts and Letters right here in New York City. Let's chat with today's guest. Anna, so excited to have you on She's My Cherry Pie and to chat birthday butter cake with you and so much more.
Hi, so good to be here with you.
Can we start off with sort of your earliest baking memory? Or one of your earliest?
Totally. Yeah. Well, this morning as I was drinking my coffee, preparing to chat with you, I was thinking about this because I know that this is how you always start. And so I was like, oh, what am I going to tell Jessie about? I found my way into my love of food through baking. My mom is a really good cook and has an insane cookbook collection. And so I grew up surrounded by cookbooks. She had subscriptions to all the food magazines, and like when the new Martha Stewart would arrive, like I was excited about it, even as a little girl, and we would look through it together and like pick out what we wanted to try making and baking. And, I think because she was such a competent cook, baking was sort of where I could, she's a great baker also, but baking was where I got excited and like could make special treats for my family. And I started baking with her at a very young age. I honestly don't remember what the first thing we baked together was. She loved trying new recipes. She still does. And we would have fun like poring over the cookbooks and the magazines together and picking out, okay, we want to try this. And I loved looking at the pictures and deciding what we wanted to make. And birthday cakes were always a big thing. She made birthday sheet cakes like in the shape of animals for all of our birthdays. I have 2 sisters. So the 3 of us would get to pick what shape animal we wanted for our birthday cake. I definitely had a few years in a row of butterfly birthday cakes. And she would, it would be a yellow cake with white frosting, and then she would put like flowers and sprinkles and stuff on it. My birthday is in May, so there were always violets in the yard. And so we would pick the violets and she would use those to decorate my cake with. And so it would be this big like butterfly shaped sheet cake with like little flowers all over the wings.
What about something maybe that you baked on your own? Do you remember like a first?
Yes. Well, so there's a famous blue birthday cake that happened by mistake. Because my mom was always the one baking all of our birthday cakes. There was one year, I was maybe like 8 years old. And my dad was like, okay, girls, we're going to make your mom a birthday cake. And we tried to make her an angel food cake because somehow we thought that was what she would want. And, I remember helping my dad, like, find the joy of cooking recipe and getting all the ingredients. Somehow the blue food coloring, like, got spilled. I don't know. We baked a blue angel food cake. And, nobody knew how to fold the egg. It's like, my dad does not know how to bake. I think that was the first and last time he baked a birthday cake with our help. And, it was hideous and disgusting, and my mom loved it. Bless her.
Of course she did. So we definitely established it was a food family, 100%, or at least you and your mom made it a food family.
Yes.
And I love that you've written, cooking was like a central passion sort of in the home with your mom, with you. You mentioned the magazines and the cookbooks. You mentioned Martha. Can you tell us a little bit more about your mom's baking cookbook collection that you would pour into? Besides, I know Joy of Cooking you would lean into.
Yes. So Claudia Fleming, The Last Course. Do you know that book?
Of course. Claudia's been a guest on the pod and she's a friend.
Oh,
yes.
When that book came out, and that was like in the early 90s, right? Like I remember my mom got it, and I remember looking through it and just feeling like it was the most elegant thing. Yeah. And like I wanted to taste everything in that book.
I love that. And I love that your mom was buying Claudia Fleming. She really was like on
She's a cookbook collector.
She had her finger on the pulse. What about food TV? Was it like a healthy household?
No.
So no TV?
We didn't watch TV.
Yep. So you didn't really realize that you wanted to pursue cooking as a career until your early 20s. I also love this about you, which I kind of knew but had to be reminded. You were like full on like an OG food video person. Before social media, you had a video series for Epicurious that was nominated for a James Beard Award in 2017, which seems like, that's almost a decade ago. That is so interesting. And did you just find that you loved it right away?
Yeah. So I have a theater background. I like performing and I like teaching. When I was at Epicurious, they were trying to like come up with video series, and I had been writing this article series at Epicurious called No Recipe Required, where I would walk people through how to make a certain type of dish and sort of like the guidelines and rules of how to do it, but without a recipe so that you can make it your own. Because that's how I cook at home. I have hundreds of cookbooks. Baking is different. I follow recipes when I bake, but when I cook savory food, I really don't follow a recipe. I love looking at inspiration from other sources, and then I sort of cook by feel based on my understanding of, how things work. And I wanted to try to teach people how to develop that intuition in the kitchen and how to be comfortable creating food that was their own without a recipe. So we turned it into a video series. It was so fun. We loved making it. And it was nominated for a James Beard Award. And then I had an Instagram video series that was very popular on Epicurious. This is before the time of Reels. I miss that time.
I know.
Editing Reels is so annoying.
It's horrible.
So I had an Instagram story series on Epicurious called At Home with Anna that was very popular. And basically it was hosted in my tiny apartment kitchen in Crown Heights. And I would go through making a recipe that was like a newly published recipe on Epicurious, usually one of my simple weeknight meal recipes usually. But I would show people sort of like how to improvise with it, also like how to fix mistakes when they happened. I definitely believe in being very sort of casual and authentic on video, and it worked. People loved it. I would make mistakes and they would just show the mistakes on camera, and that was just like a whole part of the process. And it was as a story, and like so it would be like little story slides. And I miss that format.
So you have this really extensive cookbook library, which I can actually see behind you right now. You actually only use them quite literally, like reading the recipe and following it when you're baking. And the savory ones are more for inspiration. I loved learning that. Is your baking library as big as your cooking library?
No.
Yeah.
But there's so many books that have both.
Yes.
So I guess yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know. That speaks to me. That
so the other thing about me is that I have celiac disease. And I discovered that in college, which was heartbreaking at the time because I loved baked goods and I loved baking. And, like one of my favorite things to do on the weekend with my family was to go get a croissant, and like I loved crunchy French baguette and all of the things. I was definitely, devastated when I was told I couldn't eat anything containing gluten. It did solve a lot of problems for me, but it was the early 2000s and people weren't as aware of gluten-free food as they are now. And there weren't that many good options available. And I remember my mom and I trying to figure out like, okay, how do we bake gluten-free? We were terrible at it at first. Like the only thing we could make successfully were like pancakes and waffles. But gluten-free baking has come a long way since then. And my gluten-free baking has come a long way since then. And so the interesting thing about developing recipes as baking recipes as someone who's gluten-free is that I actually have to like reverse engineer them. So I develop my baked good recipes gluten-free first, and then I retrofit them to work with gluten flour, which is usually the opposite of what people would do.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I have a lot of baking cookbooks also that are not gluten-free baking cookbooks that I will still bake from because I want to like try these amazing new recipes. But then sometimes it'll take a couple of times of baking something to make it work gluten-free.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. It's Carrie Diamond from Radio Cherry Bomb. Cherry Bomb is headed back to Miami on Tuesday, June 23rd for our Supper Club series with Whole Foods Market. It's taking place in the Sacred Space, a tropical oasis in the city dedicated to wellness. It's a gorgeous spot, and I can't wait for some of you to see it. The Supper Club evening will feature a networking reception, a panel I'm moderating with 4 amazing women, including Cherry Bomb cover star Sama Dada of Dada Eats and Alex Snodgrass of The Defined Dish, and a beautiful dinner. And everybody gets a goodie bag and the latest issue of Cherry Bomb magazine. Tickets are on sale right now at cherrybomb.com. The link is in our show notes. We would love to see you in Miami.
Now back to our guest. I noticed in your book, there are 10 recipes in the book, and 6 of them are sort of baking and dessert related. And each one, like the shortbread and the cookies and the cake, which we're going to talk about, you say gluten-free flour that has xanthan gum in it. And
Yes.
We'll talk about all of this when we talk about the recipe. So this is like a teaser. But do you have a gluten-free flour recipe that you've created that is your baby? Or do you have a favorite brand that people would probably love to hear about?
Yes. So the King Arthur Measure for Measure gluten-free flour blend is the one that I use when I want to be swapping between a gluten-free recipe and a gluten recipe. If I want it to work both ways, I find that is the flour that is the most consistent. And it contains xanthan gum, which is like a natural binder that mimics what gluten does in all-purpose flour. When I'm developing just like purely gluten-free recipes, I actually don't use that flour mix because I want to use flours that are a little bit more interesting in flavor. So I want to be using like a oat flour or a buckwheat flour or a sweet rice flour or chestnut flour or, there's all these amazing non-wheat flours that have really cool flavors, but they don't perform in baked goods the same way that all-purpose flour does.
Yeah.
When I'm developing a recipe that I want to be able to work with AP wheat flour, I will use my
Measure for measure. Now, I'd love to dive into your first book, just briefly, before we jump into the butter book. It's called For the Table, focused on hosting and entertaining. And I wondered what inspired the hook, as it were.
So when I was in the city, that was also my favorite way to gather friends. So, I moved to the city right after college, and I would host dinner parties in my apartment all the time. And that continued for all of the 12 years that I lived there. It still continues now upstate, but they're a little different now with kids and babies around. I had this since high school experience of hosting dinner parties and had collected a lot of sort of opinions and methodology that I felt worked, especially cooking out of a tiny apartment kitchen in Crown Heights. I had this tiny little galley kitchen, and then I lived on a parlor floor apartment in an old brownstone, and I actually had the original dining room as part of my apartment. It was like a very nicely unrenovated, untouched apartment. And I used the original dining room, which was the biggest room in my apartment. Some people would have probably turned that into a bedroom. I had a dining table that fit 12.
Amazing. I love that.
Because that was the most important part of my apartment, was being able to host and entertain friends. You know, tiny kitchen, big dining room. I learned that you can't go crazy and make too many things. It's easier to focus on just making 2 things for the table and then adding a few little elements. That's the philosophy of that cookbook, is 2 platter menus. And I love a family style meal. I love serving things on a huge platter and then passing that ridiculously huge platter around the table and making everybody serve themselves from it. And yeah, so that was the inspiration for the book. And every menu in the book features 2 platters plus sauces and add-ons. I believe in sauce. Sauce makes everything more fun and more special. And it takes like a simple entree to the next level when you have like a fancy sauce to go with it. Almost every menu in the book features a sauce as well, but the sauces are interchangeable and used between multiple menus.
Now, your latest book, The Butter Book, literally the best gift book ever. Listeners, if you have not seen this book, it literally looks like a stick of butter in its shape, in its cover. What do you call the material of the cover that's supposed to mimic sort of the wax paper of a stick of butter?
Is it vellum? It's very cute. It's very tactile and pleasing to hold.
And Lizzie Levon was your designer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she designed my second book, The Vintage Baker. I love her so much.
She's amazing.
She's a genius.
The whole look and feel of the book was all her idea.
I know that Chronicle approached you with the idea of writing a book about butter, and then you sort of had to take the idea and run with it. You know, there's the history of butter, the making of butter, butter accessories, how to make clarified, compound, whipped. How did all of those sort of chapters come to be? Did it sort of happen as you researched and you sort of were thinking like, oh, this could actually be a part of the story. This could be part of the story.
Yes. So I had so much fun with this book. Honestly, it's like the best homework assignment I have ever received. And, you know, they gave me a lot of leeway to sort of do whatever I wanted with it. The only limitation was space. And the hardest part was deciding how many recipes I could fit. I mean, I knew how many recipes I could fit, 10. So which recipes to choose was so hard. I had so much fun learning all about the history of butter. There's so much more history and interesting things that I learned that couldn't fit in the book. And then learning how to make butter. Of course, I had made butter before, but like I really sort of buckled down and figured out the most efficient way to do it at home. And I don't believe that you should become a butter maker. Like, I don't think it's worth it for the most part. It's delicious and fun though. And I think that everybody should make butter at least once so that you understand the process and how it works. And it's a really fun activity to do with little kids also. It's just like one of those like very basic kitchen magic transformations that like, oh, you have this heavy cream and if you agitate it enough, it separates into liquid and fat. And then you pat that fat into a stick of butter and then you can spread it on your bread. And it's like, what? That's amazing.
I love this fun fact that butter is one of the oldest human-made foods. I thought that was really cool. I also love this sort of hot take that you always want cultured butter in your fridge. Can you tell us why you love, is it almost tangier, so like more flavorful?
Yes. So cultured butter, all butter used to be cultured butter. Back in the day, before refrigeration, the cream would have to sit out. I mean, the milk would have to sit out so that the cream would rise to the top. And as it's sitting out, you know, the natural bacteria from the air are getting introduced and starting to ferment the cream. And so it gives it that sort of like cheesy, funky flavor. And then you turn that, you know, partially fermented cream into butter and it tastes amazing, I think. Now, cultured butter is made by introducing bacteria to the cream in a controlled environment, so it's not going to go bad. It just adds this nice, like, tangy flavor that I think makes the butter taste more buttery, more savory, more interesting, more buttery. I love using cultured butter as my go-to table butter. It's what I keep on the counter, a salted cultured butter. I love to buy the fancy stuff from France. It's a slightly expensive habit, but...
But you wouldn't use... this was another hot take that I loved so much. In terms of baking, you say that in terms of using unsalted butter for baking, the brand is actually not important.
I have found it's not very important, as long as it's fresh.
I thought that was so interesting because, of course, we think that we need to buy European butter or this kind of butter or high-fat butter. I mean, you are now the butter expert, and I thought that was so interesting that if it's unsalted, and you're also a super taster.
It depends on the baking recipe, though. Something that is just a very small ingredient list, and you can really taste the butter, it is important to buy a higher quality butter there.
Okay.
But if you're making a standard baked good where there's a lot going on already and you're not really tasting the butter so much as it is just the necessary fat in the recipe. So my butter cake, for that, you can use any brand of butter.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So would you use cultured butter in your shortbread?
Yes. So the shortbread recipe is actually developed specifically for cultured butter because you can taste the difference. And it's so cool.
I love that.
It just adds this little extra savory tang and intrigue to the shortbread. It's delicious. You should try it. And for baking, I always buy the Vermont Creamery unsalted cultured butter.
Yeah, I can picture
delicious.
it. I can picture it. This was another thing that I thought was so interesting. I mean, I've seen this on sticks of butter, and just was like, what does that mean? But you say that sweet cream butter is actually the butter that we're all used to. That's sort of the generic... No, it doesn't sound very generic. It sounds like delightful. But it's like the generic labeling for regular old butter. Sweet cream can mean salted or unsalted. It's just a stick of butter we're buying in the grocery store.
Sweet cream just means it's not cultured.
Ah, so interesting.
That distinction used to be important when butter started being mass-produced. It was sweet cream butter as opposed to how butter used to traditionally be made with cultured cream.
I also thought it was interesting that you make a distinction between European and Irish, Irish being the most yellow, European actually being often cultured. But if we buy a high-fat European butter, it's going to be cultured?
Not always, but often.
And it'll say the word live, which I liked.
Yeah, so if you buy a French butter, it's often a cultured butter. You have to sort of read the label a bit to discern whether it is or not. Often by default, though, it is.
Yeah.
Irish butter, is not usually cultured, but it's more yellow because of the beta carotene from grass-fed milk.
Out of the 10 recipes in the book, 6 are baking, and I know pudding isn't baking, but 6 are baking and sweets recipes.
Yes.
And you actually said that the chocolate chip cookie recipe is the one you are most proud of and that you tinkered with the most. And I love that. If you could tell us briefly, there were 2 things that I thought people will really appreciate about butter. The first is, can you tell us about frozen grated butter and the importance of that in both biscuits and pie dough? And can you tell us about why melted butter in a chocolate chip cookie in terms of its texture? And also your kind of, I think maybe your belief in life. We need to put this on a T-shirt for you. If you're a melting butter, why not brown it?
Yeah.
That should be the swag for the book.
I know. I always keep a couple sticks of butter in my freezer to have on hand when I want to bake biscuits or pie dough. It is the easiest way to make sure that you get nice clumps of butter in your dough that don't melt before they get in the oven. The way that biscuits and pie dough get that nice flakiness is because you have bits of butter in the dough that haven't been fully incorporated, and when they melt in the oven, they release steam, and that steam lifts layers of dough, and you get that nice puffy, crunchy sensation. Well, crunchy for pie dough, not crunchy for biscuits, but just airy and fluffy. So it's super simple. You just take a frozen stick of butter and you grate it on a box grater like it's a block of cheese, and then you use that in your dough. It also means that you don't have to use a food processor to make the dough, which is just an annoying thing to clean. I hate cleaning a food processor. I will do a lot of things before pulling out the food processor because I hate cleaning it. And the nice thing about this trick is that you can use compound butter also. So in my book, I use compound butter for my biscuit recipe. I freeze it first and then I grate it and incorporate it into the biscuit dough. And that means you have like a nice added flavor element as well as just flaky, buttery biscuits. It's fun. You should try it.
Now tell us about why melted butter in a chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah, so I'm very particular about my chocolate chip cookie texture. I like cookies that are super like crispy, lacy on the outside and a little gooey in the inside. And the best way to achieve that is by using melted butter in your batter instead of softened butter. So like a traditional drop cookie recipe, chocolate chip cookies are a drop cookie. It starts by creaming room temperature butter and sugar, and then you add your eggs and your flour and everything else. I like to do it with melted butter instead. And a lot of people do this. This is not an original idea. It changes the texture dramatically. And like that's one of the things I love about butter is that the way that you incorporate it into a batter changes everything. Like also with cakes, you know, if you cream the sugar and the butter first, or if you cream the butter and the flour first, like it changes the texture of the cake. It's amazing. And it changes the texture of cookies if you use melted butter or softened butter. Softened butter gives you a more like classic sort of like cakey cookie texture, which if you like that, that's what you should do. Personally, that's not my favorite. I want those crispy hard edges and that like gooey center. So I melt my butter. Also, it's easier because you don't have to remember to put the butter on the counter to bring it to room temperature in order to make cookies.
Also, like, you can make a one bowl recipe and you don't have to pull out your stand mixer if you're not creaming the butter. No, it's like, well, that's my t-shirt. Melted butter for life, or melted butter or go home or something. Melted butter or die. I don't know what it'll be.
Okay, but Jessie, if you're going to melt the butter, you might as well brown it.
Right.
Because browned butter tastes better, especially in baked goods. Because it just gives it that more caramelly, nutty, rich flavor that I love. That's what chocolate chip cookies should taste like in my mind. So I brown the butter because I'm already melting it. Just take it a little further, get those milk solids all caramelized and brown, and use that for the cookies instead.
Alrighty. Now we are going to talk about yum, 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 the birthday butter cake recipe. So, first of all, you call for reverse creaming in this recipe, which we have discussed with Rose herself on the podcast.
She's the inventor.
But if you could briefly just remind us, it basically involves combining the butter with the dry ingredients first rather than the butter and the sugar first. Can you just briefly tell us why you like it and why you like it for this recipe?
So I am all about making baking recipes as simple and foolproof as possible always, and I know you agree. Cakes can be a little finicky. Like if you overmix them, they get tough. Like all of these, it's like there's a lot of fear around cakes. So mixing the dry ingredients, specifically the flour, with the butter first coats, and this doesn't even really apply to me because I don't eat gluten, but when you're working with gluten flour, if you coat the flour with fat first, it means that the gluten doesn't have as much of a chance to sort of connect and form bonds. And that's what gives you like a gluey, tough texture in a baked good. So you're preventing that from happening, which means there's no fear of over mixing the batter. You still don't want to, mix it too much because of the eggs. But
yeah, you describe it as tender, buttery crumb, dense enough to sink your teeth into, but airy enough to melt in your mouth. Is there any reason, and then I promise we're going to get into the recipe. Is there any reason why we shouldn't just reverse cream for the rest of our lives? It's so much easier.
It's so much easier. I really don't see a reason not to always do it.
Yeah. Okay, now I promise we're going to talk about the recipe. One last thing. Tell us about baby. I forgot to mention that before. How's that going?
My book came out in March, and then I gave birth in April.
Oh, my God.
It's been a busy spring. Yes. He ate a lot of butter in the womb. One of my pregnancy cravings was potato chips dipped in butter.
Oh, my gosh. Delicious.
You got to try it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that Irish sandwich of...
Yes, that we made at the Kerrygold Luncheon with Cherry Bomb.
Yes. Which is so good, which is just like Irish butter with chips between white bread. That's delicious. I'm just like, forget the bread. Just give me the chips and butter.
I love it.
And that was something that I ate a lot of while pregnant. So he's like a nice, big, healthy boy.
Oh, I love it. All right. Now we're going to talk about our cake. Yay.
Yes.
So we are going to heat the oven to 350 degrees. We're going to generously butter 2 8-inch cake pans. Then we're going to generously sprinkle granulated sugar into each pan, rotating over the sink until the sides are coated. So a few questions. First of all, favorite cake pan? I am assuming you're a sharp-sided gal. Like you're
Yes.
not. Yes. We need our
Yes.
sharp sides, sharp corners.
Mm-hmm.
And then if this was not a butter book, would you ever use cooking spray?
No.
Okay. You're just a butter girl. I love it.
Yeah, I'm anti-aerosol.
Tell me about this sugar.
I always use sugar instead of flour when I make cakes.
Because I use it in a bun cake, but I've never done it in a cake because actually I don't flour cake pans. I grease and put a circle of parchment on the bottom and then grease that, but I don't flour.
Mm-hmm. So I love the extra sort of crispy, buttery sweet edge that the butter and sugar makes on a cake.
Would you do it on chocolate cake? Like any cake?
Yeah.
Oh, does it help with release?
I think so.
Okay, but you've never had any issues.
I've never had any issues. Yeah,
Love
it always comes out.
That's a tip I have for making a bun cake is butter or maybe spray, because it's me, sorry peeps, and then sugar. And then I feel like some people have said it didn't work. And I'm like, oops, but I think it works.
No,
Anyway,
I think it works to release the cake just as well as flour, personally. And, sometimes when you use flour, you get that kind of weird excess floury texture on the outside. So I'm like, well, I'd rather have a caramelized crust.
Totally. And you're like a no parchment person. Or just for this application, for cake.
Yeah, I use parchment sometimes, especially for like a torte. If it's like an extra like damp batter.
All right, so in the bowl of a stand mixer fitted with a paddle attachment, we're going to stir together on the lowest setting some all-purpose flour or, as discussed, a little GF flour with the xanthan gum. The measurements are slightly different. It's a little bit more of the GF flour. Then we have some granulated sugar, some baking powder, kosher salt, just until combined. And we're doing this in the stand mixer. Would you ever just hold the stand mixer bowl and whisk it with your hand?
Sure.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Now we're going to add, this is the reverse creaming part, we're going to add some unsalted room temp butter into that mixture. We're going to beat on low until the mixture begins to appear sandy with some larger clumps of butter still visible. So a couple of questions. Is the butter cubed, and what does room temperature look like to the butter expert, who is Anna Stockwell?
It does not need to be cubed if it's truly room temperature, because truly room temperature butter means that you can like push your finger into it and it goes splat.
Yep.
It's easy to press with your finger.
So you just could, take it out of the paper and throw the whole stick in.
Yeah.
So that answers both my questions, not cubed and also what room temp is to you. So we've increased the speed slightly, I guess, because we didn't want the dry ingredients to cover our entire kitchen.
Yes.
But still on low speed now, we're going to slowly pour in some buttermilk. Does it need to be room temp?
I don't think so.
Yeah, great. Until the mixture is fully moistened. Am I picturing wet sand? Yep. Increase the speed to medium. And now we're going to beat for about 3 minutes. The batter will increase in volume, lighten in color. Now we're going to add some vanilla. 2 questions. I noticed it wasn't a huge amount. I think it's a teaspoon. And you call it a butter cake, not a vanilla cake. But for a cake that is not chocolate, that is not flavored with something other than vanilla and butter, I am so vanilla forward, I probably would have gone as much as a tablespoon. Is that a purposeful move because you wanted that butter flavor to really pop?
Yes, that is a purposeful move. I didn't want it to be a vanilla cake. I wanted it to be a butter cake.
Love.
That's also why using the buttermilk, so you get a little bit more of that like buttery tang. Yeah, I didn't want the vanilla to like crowd out the flavor of the butter.
And is there a favorite vanilla brand of yours?
The Nielsen Massey
Yeah,
one.
Nielsen Massey.
I usually have that one.
Yep.
You can get it in most stores, but it's like better than the generic.
Then we're going to add some room temp eggs. Still on medium speed at this point, I'm thinking.
Yes.
One at a time, beating until the batter is smooth, about 30 seconds, scraping down the sides of the bowl after each addition of an egg. We'll divide the batter between those gorgeous, kind of sugary, sparkly prepared pans, smoothing the tops, banging each filled pan on the counter just to dislodge bubbles. I thought this was interesting. So we're going to bake for 35 to 40 minutes, rotating. Cake will be golden brown, pulls away from edges. springs back. So you have a couple of indicators, which I like. It's always nice to give a few. But I thought it was interesting that there was no skewer or toothpick or cake tester instruction.
Oh,
are you just not that? That's not how you roll.
I just am not that fussy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mess with that.
You set the timer, you open the oven, you touch it, you smell it, and you know.
I think those are enough indicators.
Yep.
I think if you're also sticking a cake tester in there, like you're driving yourself crazy. That's one too many steps.
Love you. Love you for that.
Yeah.
We're going to let cool for 15 minutes in the pan before inverting the cakes onto the cooling rack and let cool completely before frosting. As I asked you, so I think I know the answer, there's no fear because it's sugar and it's not paper, blah, 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 that the cakes will stick if you leave them longer than 15 minutes.
No, I just want to get them out. They'll cool faster if you get them out.
Of course. Yep.
So,
okay, so now...
we want to get to the frosting faster.
I know. Hello. That's the part I'm excited about it all. So now we're going to sift some cocoa powder. And I'm assuming because you didn't tell us, you don't mind either one, natural or Dutch processed?
Either.
Yeah. What do you use?
I usually use just natural.
You do? Interesting.
Yeah.
What brand?
Ghirardelli.
Okay. Yeah, it's so interesting. I always use Dutch because I love the color and I like the flavor. So that's interesting. Okay, so we're going to sift some cocoa powder into the bowl of our stand mixer, which we've cleaned. Add some, not all of the confectioner's sugar, but some of it, and some kosher salt. And we'll whisk by hand until fully combined. Favorite whisk, either brand or type?
I love a mini whisk.
Oh, me too, Anna. I love minis. Oh my,
I love a mini whisk.
spatula?
And I have, so I have 3 or 4, and they're French, and the brand is called Best.
Oh, nice.
And they have wooden handles.
Oh, nice.
You can get them on Amazon.
Do you put a wooden handled utensil like that in the dishwasher?
I do.
You do?
It's fine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's not like an untreated wood. It's like a painted wood.
Oh, nice.
So it's fine.
Nice.
Yeah. So I usually use a mini whisk because it's like it's easier to wash. It's less of a mess.
I know. I love a mini whisk.
It's like fun to hold.
I'm like getting excited right now just thinking about how much I love mini whisk. And I just wanted to flag for people. Basically, this is American buttercream.
Yes.
Yes. Which is, I just want to say, my favorite. But anyway.
Yes. Other types of buttercream are pain in the butt to make.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. This is why I love this so much. Okay.
And also American buttercream is more buttery because it's just butter,
I mean, how come I did not think of that? Of course.
Exactly, because it doesn't have eggs in it or anything else. It's all about the butter. So that's obviously why I chose it.
Well, speaking of that, so this would be an occasion when we were talking about the fact that you have said that if you're using unsalted butter in baking, a brand doesn't matter, except when the butter is the star, and that would be this buttercream. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would want something.
I would use a good high-fat European style butter here.
Yep, nice. This just blew my mind. Now, get ready, listeners. We're going to pour boiling water into this frosting. Explain that.
Okay, where did I find this method? Because when I found this method, it blew my mind.
Yeah. I actually add heavy cream, because I'm extra, and also because it whips. So you get a beautiful American buttercream texture, and I think a less sweet American buttercream. But you're using chocolate anyway, which means the sweetness is not the issue the way it is when it's
Putting the boiling water in, it instantly creates this like melted chocolate mixture without ever actually having to like melt chocolate.
So you bloomed the chocolate.
Yeah. I forget where I first found it. I think maybe on King Arthur's website they had a recipe that used this technique. And then I like went on a deep dive researching this technique, and it actually was like a Hershey's recipe that used it that was like on the back of a Hershey's box or something. And it became popular from that. It's magic. You need to try it. The only annoying part of it is you really do need to sift the cocoa powder. Because, I don't like, unnecessary fussy steps. I tried to do it without, and it didn't work as well because you get little... Cocoa powder is just so clumpy. Yeah. It didn't work. So you got to sift your cocoa powder, which is like the one fussy part of this frosting. But yeah, pouring the boiling water in, it just creates this like nice chocolatey, melty base that you add more of the butter and powdered sugar to, and then it becomes a really good chocolate buttercream.
Right, because we haven't added the butter yet. That was my question, because I worried that if you're using boiling water and then we're going to add the butter, it doesn't melt the butter in the hot water, or no, because there's also the second installment of the confectioner sugar. So by the time you've like
whisked it, like by the time you're adding the butter, it's not boiling anymore. It's just lukewarm. And it does melt the butter a little bit. It comes back as you whisk it.
Oh, I love this. Because maybe I said this, but when we pour in that boiling water and our vanilla, we're stirring with a rubber spatula.
Yeah.
We haven't even turned on our stand mixer yet.
Yeah.
Until no clumps are visible. Okay, great. Then we're going to affix the bowl to the stand mixer with our paddle attachment. We'll add that remaining sugar and the butter now.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say just like, don't go too fast. If you're going too fast and the base is still really hot, like take a beat.
Yeah. I'm always up for a beat.
Yeah.
Then we're going to beat on low until the sugar's fully incorporated. Then we'll increase to high once we sort of see, I assume, everything sort of coming together and beat until the frosting is smooth and glossy.
Yes.
Mind blown. That's all I can say.
It's a really delicious frosting.
Yeah. Then we're going to place a dollop of frosting in the center of the cake plate. Was there a type of cake plate? Or you just have beautiful things because you're a beautiful person?
Yeah. I love vintage cake stands.
Yeah.
I have a lot of vintage cake stands and punch bowls. I feel like those are categories of things that people just don't acquire anymore. And there's a lot of them in, flea markets and thrift stores that you can find. And I'm always picking them up. I can't resist them.
So we're going to place a dollop of frosting in the center of our vintage cake stand plate. To help secure the cake, we'll drape some pieces of parchment and wax paper around the outer edges to keep the plate clean. That seems slightly not Anna-ish to me because it seems slightly fussy.
It is slightly fussy, yeah. But it's
that's
like,
how you roll. Yeah, no, I usually just go in with like a wet paper towel if there's a lot of frosting. But anyway, I appreciate it. No judgment.
Well, it also, I remember when, I don't think my mom did that when she was frosting cakes, but my uncle, who is a very sort of exacting baker, would always do that for making a birthday cake. And the best part was then you pull out those pieces of parchment and each kid gets one to lick.
Yes, that is really good. That you're going to be the best mom. Well, you already are the best mom, but I mean, once your child is old enough to lick parchment paper.
I know. We're going to try to make it a whole year with no sugar. We'll see.
So we're going to place the first cake layer on top of that dollop, and then we're going to scoop about a third of the frosting on top of the first, gently spread it evenly across the top, about a 1/4 inch thick. Do you offset spatula, I'm assuming?
Yeah. A spoon, whatever.
Yeah. Then we'll place the second cake layer on top of the frosting, gently press down to secure. Scoop all of the frosting on top. I love this, rather than go in steps. All of the frosting then gets plopped on top, and then just start working it down around the edges of the cake. Mm-hmm. And back to the spoon, I love this tip, and I have used it myself. But if you want swoops and swirls, if you want your frosting to be swoopy and swirly, you're going to which you do. You're going to use a spoon to achieve that.
Yes.
You can use
the back of a spoon.
The back of a spoon, right? That's very important. You can use a long offset spatula, but that would be more to make a smooth, flat surface.
Yes.
Love.
Yes.
Once you're done frosting, we will wiggle out our parchment paper and reveal our clean cake stand that is vintage from a flea market. And we will give the parchment paper to any children that are around. You say, if possible, chill the cake in the fridge for an hour before serving, just because it'll slice more easily.
Yes.
But I hate cold cake.
Same.
Right.
Yeah.
Does it get cold? I mean,
for an hour, it's not going to get cold.
Okay, good. It'll just set the frosting. Oh my gosh.
Store your cake on the counter.
Yeah. Please.
Don't store it in the fridge.
No.
No, cold cake gets awful.
Awful. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Anna. And I just want to say that you are my cherry pie.
Thank you. So good to be here with you.
That's it for today's show. Don't forget to follow She's My Cherry Pie on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And tell your pals about us. You can find today's recipe at cherrybomb.substack.com. She's My Cherry Pie is a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. Our producers are Carrie Diamond, Catherine Baker, and Jenna Sadu. Thank you so much for listening to She's My Cherry Pie, and happy baking!